Hey, here we are once again.
Yep.
I wonder if people are getting sick out of this.
We got a new movie review we got to do today. It was a pretty good movie. I liked it.
I liked it very much as well. I think I mentioned this on the Sidetrack show yesterday, but this actually premiered on. You keep do. You do.
Well, no, when I do it, the volume comes on automatically.
Then I lose my train of thought because I hear my own voice coming back at me all the time. I think I mentioned this on Sidetrack show that I actually first started watching this movie because I guess it premiered on Shudder on June 18th, and they premiered it on Joe Bob's Drive-In. And I first started watching it, but I think it was like a Saturday night, and I was like, I drank a lot and I was like really sleepy. So I think I fell asleep like partway and I didn't like remember a lot of it. So I definitely wanted to, revisit it because it seemed really cool, and it seemed to need like a more sober watch. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And I'm glad I did because this movie was rad. This was another horror comedy. It's called Scare Package. It's actually an anthology. Now, from what I could determine, I think it at the Nightmares Film Festival of 2019, where it was voted, the audiences or whoever the critics were, everything voted it the best horror comedy at the festival. And it's pretty easy to see why. I mean, I love horror anthology movies anyway, but this was a really good one. And this is one of the few, actually, it's kind of the only one I can think of offhand, where the wraparound is like really kind of like the best part of the movie. I mean, it's all good. Like all the segments are good. Some of them are better than others. That always happens. But this one, even the wraparound story is excellent.
What makes this one good is that it's retro. They're taking it back to the 80s. They even got down lines where the fucking VCR is fucking up. The music, everything, the content, the special effects. There's a lot of gore in it. It's funny. It's retro gore. And not even a single pretense of any kind of political message, which is making a political message in itself nowadays because they're always trying to insert something. The movie just doesn't give a fuck. It's a good movie.
It's super fun. Yeah. And it's interesting because what they did, and this was a pretty clever, kind of framing device too. I guess Nightmare Cinema kind of did a similar, but I think this worked out better because it made more sense in the context. So you got your wraparound story, which is based around a video store. Now it seems to be set in the present day because of the TVs and the cell phones and everything like that. But the video store at the heart of it in the framing device is kind of like a throwback, like a retro, VHS DVD.
It's
like
hard to tell.
It's
hard to tell. They just kind of threw it together.
Yeah, it doesn't really matter.
They don't care. Yeah.
So it's called Rad Chad's Video Emporium. And even like the and I'll kind of get into this a little bit too, but even the logo of Rad Chad's looks almost exactly like the Joe Bob's Drive-In logo. And the guy, Rad Chad, who owns it, is like a huge Joe Bob Briggs fan. So what the kind of setup is that there's this weird, creepy dude that hangs around who's like a total like horror dork. And he wants to work at the store, but Rad Chad does not want him to work at the store because he's kind of weird and creepy and annoying. So he hires this other guy, this other kid whose name is Han. And so
who's like 4'5".
Yeah, he's like a little short guy.
Yeah.
And so there's like conflict between the creepy guy, who's I think his name is Sam, and Han, because Han really wants to do a good job, but Sam doesn't think he knows enough about horror movies or whatever. So there's a training thing. And then it seems like the individual like stories that they're showing within the anthology are like on the videotapes. Like, because he's showing videotapes like, hey, check out this movie, or like, they're playing them in the store and stuff like that. So that's kind of like how the framing device goes. And then as the movie goes on, you get to the end part, and then the framing device opens up and becomes its own story as well, which I thought was kind of a cool. And like I said, I think it's probably my favorite one, the framing device story, particularly like when it goes into the end. You know what I mean?
I got to see it again.
Yeah.
Yeah, I want to see it again, do a different analysis of it. But yeah, it was a good movie. It's fun.
Yeah.
I was getting distracted a lot when I was watching it, but I love the tone.
This movie,
it
hilarious. Like some of the gore gags in this was definitely made. I mean, it's like 7 different directors. One of the segments, fun fact, was directed by Baron Vaughn, the comedian, who he's been on tons of shit, but I know him because he played Servo on the reboot of Mystery Science Theater, like when they did it on Netflix. So he directed the one segment. He's kind of in it, but just like as, like in a cameo kind of appearance. So what you got is, this is basically, 7 different directors or however many it is. And you can tell that everybody is like, loves fucking horror movies. And there's like some deep cuts in this, like some of the references they make and some, because what it is, it's kind of like, it's very meta, and it's like making fun of the tropes of horror, but also like in a really affectionate way. It kind of had a little bit, I don't want to say it was like Scream, because it wasn't like that. It had more of like a Cabin in the Woods type of vibe to it, maybe, where it was just kind of like meta, where in some of the things, like the characters were aware that they were in a horror movie and were trying to do things to like get them out of the horror movie. You know what I mean?
Yeah, they were just having fun with it.
Yeah, and like, the very first part of it, like before you even get to the framing device of Rad Chads, there's a segment called Cold Open, which is basically about this guy whose name is Mike Myers. And he's like this really nice guy, but he's tired of only being in horror movies and being in the cold open. You know what I mean? So they show him like doing things like moving the sign. So like the camping teenagers go to the abandoned insane asylum, and like selling a house, like a haunted house, to somebody, and like doing all this other kind of stuff. And he wants to like survive to the end of the movie, or like be the killer, or like, be a bigger part of it. So it kind of goes like that. But it's, like I said, it's very, very meta. So then, like I said, it goes into like the framing device of the Horror Emporium. And then after that, I think is probably, it seemed like of all the reviews that I watched and read of this movie, this seems to be like the all around favorite, which was One Time in the Woods. It's a very simple setup where it's just kind of like making fun of like the campers out in the woods trope. But basically you have all these people out there. This guy comes up to them and says, you need to kill me, or you need to stop me. And then he just starts turning into this goo monster. Yeah. And I'm laughing just thinking about it. It's like the gore in this is fantastic. Yeah. It's like, it's super disgusting. It's super hilarious.
And they know that you've watched a bunch of horror movies, and they know how you think. So the characters are actually messing with you about what you're thinking. Like you said, it's meta. Yeah. Not all the time, but most of the time. Because they know that what's going to happen next, or they know the trope. So they're going to fuck with you about it. I liked it.
I did too. And like I said, it's easy. The tone of it is kind of hard to pull off, because it's like, you want to be making fun of it, but you can tell that these people that made this are also like really, really love horror movies. Yeah. And so they're not making fun of it in any kind of like mean-spirited way.
It's also pretty high quality. It's a high-quality movie. We're not talking about Velocipaster. I mean, Velocipaster was it had good parts about it, but that's a cheap movie. This actually looks a lot more expensive.
Yeah, I did. I'd be curious to know how much this cost to make. I mean, I heard it was low budget.
It's like Creepshow or something like that.
Yeah, I heard it was low budget, and like, since it just went around to festivals and things like that. But
it shows you what you can do on a low budget, though.
Yeah, it really does. It really didn't occur to me that it was like a low budget movie.
No, it looked expensive.
Particularly a lot of the gore effects, in that one segment, like with the guy melting and like turning into goo, and then there's like, people getting hit in the crotch with axes and people exploding.
Well, this is an independent film. It's not a big fucking Hollywood studio, and I'm sure that when you look at the budgets of some of those Hollywood movies, it's all padded out. There's a lot of corruption going on in there. They can't cost that much. $1 billion movies. It's just, if you're in a more efficient system, you can get a lot more for your buck than what a big Hollywood studio fucking gets for their dollar. Think about it.
Well, yeah.
And this movie I thought it was cooler than, say, like Invisible Man. And even though Invisible Man was a good movie,
I really liked Invisible Man.
But I bet you Invisible Man was fucking 4 times, 5 times what this cost.
Although even that was like a fairly inexpensive movie, as
that was my example, though.
Go. Yeah,
that was my example. I was just talking about the efficiency of these new independent films.
Yeah,
you can just get a lot of bang for your buck. There's still a lot of old school talent out there.
Well, yeah, and like I said, I think after CGI proliferated so much in the 90s and early 2000s, especially in horror and sci-fi, I think there was kind of like a big backlash against, using too much CGI because it just got overused because you could use it, so people used it too much.
Yeah.
And then I think people got sick of it because it was ubiquitous, and I think there was kind of like a movement little bit to go back toward doing things practically or in camera.
And bad CG looks like shit.
And it still does. Yeah. That's the thing. And we've mentioned this like hundreds of times before probably, but it's like good practical effects will never age because it's there. It's, the technology is not going to like age out of it.
Even bad practical effects are better than bad CG. Think about it.
Well, yeah. Because at least, like I said, it's actually there.
Right. Yeah. And the people are reacting to it.
Yeah.
But no, there's a lot of shitty practical effects horror movies that they're still awesome.
Well, yeah, I'm just like, because I'm a lot more willing to give leeway to bad practical because at least somebody made that with their hands.
Like Cronenberg movies. You know what I mean? A lot of the special effects, they weren't that sophisticated, but it holds up. Like, look at The Brood.
Yeah.
The Brood didn't have expensive special effects. They weren't even great special effects. That's a fucking great movie.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and I think the same thing applies here, although, like I said, particularly the segment with the goo monster, which was probably the goriest, although they were all pretty gory.
That was just funny, though.
And it was just like, it was just one of those things where it was so gory and over the top that you couldn't like help but laugh, even though it was completely disgusting. Yeah. Because the whole time the dude's turning into the goo monster, he's just kind of like making like commentary about
it. Although, those special effects right there were probably almost on par with a lot of what you would see in The Thing.
Yeah.
The difference is that it was the lighting. It was in broad daylight.
Yeah.
So it kind of showed some, a lot of its flaws. Had it been in a darker, set or a darker environment, it would have looked even better. But the tone of the movie's fuck it, man. Just do it.
Well, they're just having fun. That is definitely, this movie is a lot of fun.
Yeah. And, the goo monster's telling jokes. So fuck it.
Yeah, he's just kind of like, oh man, I think my eyes are gonna fall out.
Yeah, you don't have to be convinced that it's really a melting man. You just have to be entertained.
Then he's like, some of my goo is like over there, and I'm kind of like, can you kind of scrape it back over here because I'm afraid that when I go back into the thing, like I don't know. Yeah, so that was like easily probably the funniest and goriest kind of one. And then there was one called Mr., which was kind of about one of those like weird men going their own way groups and stuff like that. And then this one guy and it kind of doesn't go in the direction that you think it's going to go in. You think it's going to go in a Fight Club kind of direction, and it doesn't. And then there's one called Girls Night Out of the Body, which is about 3 girls that are going on a thing and they steal like a skull-shaped lollipop, and bad things happen after that. Then there's kind of another kind of slasher trope one. It's called The Night He Came Back Again, Part 4, The Final Kill, which is kind of making fun of your supernatural slashers that that they won't die. So basically what the setup is there's a 4th of July killer, and all the people in the movie have captured him and are doing like just increasingly crazy things like to get him to die for real. And then like all of them are like dying in crazy accidental ways and shit like that. Like I said, people explode, people are filled with fireworks. It's delightful. And then there's one called So Much to Do, which is the one that was directed by Baron Vaughn from Mystery Science Theater. And that kind of has to do with, that was a little bit one of the weaker ones, I think. It was still good, but it wasn't quite as funny as the other ones. It did have like some funny moments. It was kind of about this guy. It didn't really explain a lot, but there was a guy that got taken over by 2 wizards, necromancers, something like that. And then like he possessed this woman, and then it had to do with this show called Battle of Mages, and she was like really adamant that she didn't want spoilers, and she was like kind of beating up this demon that had taken over her body or something like that. It was pretty fun. Like it was very simple, and it was like kind of funny. And then you get like the last segment, which is kind of a continuation of Rad Chad's horror thing, because that's like all the same characters, but this one's called Horror Hypothesis. So you get Chad and Han and Sam, and then you have all these other characters, and then it goes very meta and very Cabin in the Woods, where it's like this research facility that seems to be like trying to figure out like all these like tropes of horror movies, like why does the girl keep falling down, like when she's running in the slasher theater and everything like that. Now, I will say that even though the gory one, like in the woods one, that made me laugh a lot. The thing that made me laugh the most, and I'm not going to spoil it completely, but it was at the end of this bit when the one guy was like trying to approach the killer or trying to kill like the slasher or whatever. And they totally did an homage to Friday the 13th, the final chapter with Corey Feldman and everything. Yeah. And it was hilarious. I just laughed and laughed and laughed. Now it's like, if you've never seen Friday the 13th part 4, that would probably wouldn't be that funny to you. But I mean, I guess it would still be funny, but it's much funnier if you've seen that movie. And because it's cool because I feel like when they made this movie, they made this for horror fans. Yeah. I mean, other people can enjoy it. It's still funny. It's still gory. It's,
but if you've been around for a long time, you'll understand it a lot.
But deeper. If you're into like, old horror movies, like 80s horror movies, then you will get a lot more enjoyment out of this.
If you grew up in the 80s, you would.
Yeah, there are tons of like references back. And there is also a very funny cameo appearance by the aforementioned Joe Bob Briggs, who was in the last part of this, which I guess is why, because this is what was funny when I started watching it on Joe Bob's Drive-In. It was like on his live show that he does on Shudder, like on Friday. I think it's on Friday nights. And, the Darcy, the mail girl, she said to him, she's like, "Oh, you're in this." And I fell asleep before it ended. So I didn't realize, like, I thought she just meant, "Oh, you're in this," because Rad Chad had like a picture of him, like hanging from his, rear view mirror. And like, he wore the bolo tie and everything. And he was a big fan, but no, Joe Bob Briggs is actually in this. He has like a cameo, but it's not like until the really end. And he's playing like himself. And you get like Rad Chad is like, all fangirling and shit like that, squealing about it. He's like trying to save him from the killer and all this other kind of crap. But it's like, this was just, I really want this to get like a wider audience, because this was just a super fun, super gory. And especially if you like anthologies, especially like 80s movies, this was just a delightful movie and like a hell of a lot of fun to watch. I mean, we've really seen like a lot of decent horror flicks lately, haven't we?
Yeah.
And I was watching another review of this because apparently this also played at the Chattanooga Film Festival. And one of the reviewers that I watch had paid, because Chattanooga Film Festival this year, it's completely online. So he's like, I just paid $30 and I got to see every single horror movie that they showed. And he's like, almost all of them were excellent. So he's like, so that's really cool that like I paid $30 and I got to see like all of these fucking movies, which I probably wouldn't have got to see had I gone to the film festival, like,
I'm
in person.
Now, Mango Badger, he just mentioned it too. He said, like these smaller budget movies are going to be, that's the wave of the future. I believe so too.
Yeah.
I mean, some of these smaller budget independent films that we've seen on streaming services and on Xbox, I thought in general, I had more fun watching those than the ones we were watching on AMC A-list back when that was running. I mean, they had some good tentpole movies that last year.
Yeah.
They had a few here and there, but just numerically, I think I like, what's been going on streaming better.
Well, yeah, like I said, and we've talked about this a lot. It's just, it's so much easier for like a small group of people who you don't need a ton of money. You don't need, all you need is like just the know-how. You put the shit together. And then if you can get it into a festival or something like that, I mean, you can get it seen by millions of people because you can just get it on a streaming platform. I mean, like I said, I don't know how much this movie costs to make. But they premiered it at a film festival and then Shudder picked it up and now it's on Shudder and like all these people can see it and all these people have reviewed it.
The only thing that stood out over the past couple of years at AMC was like the John Wick movies. I really enjoyed the Riff Track live shows that they had. Then the retro movies where they did Alien One, that was really good. What was the other retro movie that we saw that was good?
The Shining.
The Shining, yeah.
We saw The Shining.
But a lot of the movies that we've been seeing streaming that we really enjoyed, they wouldn't have shown that in AMC.
Yeah, a lot of them wouldn't have gotten theatrical.
They never would have gotten a theatrical release.
But like I said, that's kind of one of the cool things about streaming. Yes, I like to leave the house. Yes, I like to go see movies on the big screen and stuff. But you get a lot more options and you get a lot more I mean, just like the guy was saying about the film festival, he's like, it's really cool that the film festival, even though it sucks the reason why it had to go online, but he's like, I could watch all the movies for $30. Whereas if I had gone to it in person, because of the scheduling and, shit like that, I might have missed some of them. And he's like, so I got to see pretty much all of the horror movies that they had, and they were all pretty good. So he's like, I got to see a bunch of shit that I wouldn't have got to see.
Now, from AMC said that they weren't going to open back up, but then I started hearing that no, they're going to open back up in a limited.
Yeah, I think some of them are going to. I think they're closing the ones that were underperforming, like before
what about
all
ours?
This happened. I don't know. I haven't heard anything about the local one.
Yeah.
I mean, I feel like that one.
That was a nice one.
Well, that's a nice one. And also that mall, it's attached to the mall, and that is not a dead mall by any stretch of the imagination.
That mall's going to die, though.
But it might now. But even, like, I know because a lot of malls are struggling. Well, we're struggling before that. That one was not.
Yeah, it was only running on two anchor stores, and one of them was a Sears. Wasn't it a Sears?
Was it?
No, the Sears was already gone.
No, Sears left a long time ago.
Already gone.
But I noticed that there weren't a lot of vacancies though. Like in with the smaller stores, they still had like a bunch of other stores. But that was a while back.
But I was looking into the details of mallology. Most of the damn income came from the anchor stores.
Well, yeah, that's the case. In
the little stores that were in the middle, really, the rents that they were paying were actually pretty. Were pretty low. Like there's not enough to run the damn mall. Yeah. The upkeep of the mall.
Well, yeah, it's always your anchors.
It's the anchors. And that mall, even though it looked great, two of the anchors were already gone, and it was running on a surviving two. And I think one of them was fucking Macy's or something.
I can't remember.
They were all in danger of closing.
Or
Dillard's.
I think it was Dillard's.
They were all in danger of closing.
Open.
They're all in danger of closing on a nationwide level. So
I was just saying that, I mean, compared to some of the like dead malls that we see on like, Sal's channel or Dan Bell's channel,
it's just
where there's like nobody. It's like usually when we went there, because sometimes we'd go to the food court or FYE or something before the movie, and the place was usually crowded. And and I think almost all the storefronts were full. There were. Well,
I think there's some kind of low and middle income housing right there in that area. And that was bringing them in there. Yeah,
there's a lot of apartments. There's a lot of offices around there as well, where people.
The problem is that the anchors in other stores fail.
Yeah.
So the anchor closes on a nationwide level.
Yeah.
It doesn't have anything to do with that mall.
Yeah.
And then once all the anchors nationwide are gone, the mall cannot generate enough money on the little renters to keep the upkeep of the mall.
Yeah.
And it slowly just starts to consume itself. That's an antique way of doing retail. The future of pretty much retail is going to be online, most of it, or in the uncovered open malls. So it's going back to a Main Street style.
Yeah.
Because the enclosed mall with all the air conditioning and then hooked up to the damn bus network, kids get in there and fuck it up, and the adults that spend money don't want to go in there anymore. And that's basically what all the analysts say. Teenagers kill malls.
Yeah.
And that's the problem.
Well, and that's, I mean, even back in the day when it's like, that was kind of the thing. It's teenagers would go hang out in the mall, but it's like they didn't have a lot of disposable income back in the 80s and 90s. So they would just kind of hang out in there.
They weren't selling drugs and shooting people.
Well, yeah.
And that was
back in the 90s they were.
Yeah. Well, that was the beginning of the end of it.
Yeah.
Because it's been going on for 20, 30 years, just the slow. And as soon as the online option came, it started to fall apart. It seems to be that what they're going to a Main Street model, like around there where Five Guys is, and then next to it, fucking the ice cream place, like that.
Well, yeah,
that's what they want, because there's no air conditioning. You got to go in the store, and to go in the store, you got to buy something.
Yeah,
it's a racket. Everything's a racket. It's all about manipulating masses to get money out of them.
Well, yeah.
Yeah, that's how you make money.
But I mean, the thing is, it's not, I don't know, it is a racket, but it's like you're not going to go in Five Guys unless you want a fucking burger. You know
that's what I'm saying.
They're not making you come in there.
No, but I mean, it's a racket. It's dividing. I mean, it's a racket in terms of a manipulation. Yeah. They're dividing paying customers from non-paying customers.
Yeah.
And
you have to come in there.
Malls encouraged non-paying customers
because it encourages you to like hang out.
Encourages you to hang out in the damn air conditioning, and unemployed teenagers in there doing fucked up shit, and the adults say, "I don't want to be in here." You know what I mean? And then that's evidently what was going on.
Somebody asked if we had been to Key West and if we'd seen Robert the Doll. You know what's weird? It's like I have lived in Florida pretty much my whole entire life. I was born here. I have never been to Key West. I should probably go. I think the farthest south I've been is Miami. I have been to Miami a couple times, but I've never been to Key West. I'd also kind of like to go to the Everglades one of these days. It's weird how many places in Florida I've never been to, even though I've like lived here my whole entire life. But yeah, so any other questions that we have to answer? You're scrolling through there looking
I'm just
for
seeing what everybody's
anything
saying.
else. But
what's in danger of close? Zach, I was just talking about malls.
We were talking about AMC theaters, then we were talking about
he's trying to jump in the conversation late ass first and ask me what's this about what? No, we were just talking about malls, and that malls are going to die off because on a nationwide level the anchor stores aren't doing well, and the malls can't survive without anchor stores. They were paying most of the bills. Yeah, I mean, you have to think that the whole thing about department stores, that's department stores, that kind of whole concept, that's very like fucking late 19th, early 20th century. Yeah, that's
when
that's
it
40s.
was like a one-stop shop for everything, which you don't really need that anymore. Nope. So I feel like shit's gonna go either like online behemoth like Amazon, where you can just buy everything and not have to leave your house, or it's gonna be like small specialty shops like boutiques where you go to get a specific thing.
Because if you looked at a damn department store, what it was a gigantic store that had a little bit of everything, but if you looked at a single item, it was always some shit you didn't want. It was almost kind of like a Soviet sales pitch where, here, take this. We have 4 purses. You can have one of these. That's it. You know what I mean? It was like
we have a selection of 4 purses.
Yeah, we have a selection of 4 purses, and then we have fucking 5 couches, and then we have fucking 2 different kinds of fucking pantsuits. You know, it's just they had everything, but only a couple choices of each one.
Well, yeah, because they only have so much
room. So
I mean, the same thing happens with Walmart. It's like they only have so much fucking space to put shit in there. So it's like they only have like a small like number.
I remember growing up in the 80s and everybody had the same damn furniture and the same damn clothes over and over and over again. It was like something out of the fucking Soviet Union.
Well, that's what kind of cracks me up whenever I see movies from back then, or movies that are like nowadays that are like, you know, kind of retro for that time period. Yeah. And when you saw, like when I was watching Stranger Things and everything like that, I was just like, holy crap, we had that couch. Oh my God, we had those dishes. Oh my God. It's like, because everybody had like, there weren't that many to choose from. A
friend of ours says, well, that's, I mentioned this one time to a friend of ours, says, well, that's capitalism. I said, no, not really. That was more like communism. Capitalism was, you know, small family businesses with homemade fucking shit made on the premises. These were just huge corporations fucking selling out bulk, one size fits all fucking designs. It was like just like something out of Soviet Union.
Well, that's what I mean. It's like it's so much easier nowadays to get like exactly what you want. It's like, you know, you don't have to just go to like
it wasn't
remember
like that back in the day.
Like service merchandise or something like that and pick one of the like 4 couch designs they had.
When we were growing up, if you wanted cool clothes, you had to go to like a secondhand store and try to find something that came out of the 1920s, the 30s, or 40s, and then modify it into something that looked goth or punk rock. You had to do a lot of custom shit because you couldn't buy any of those clothes.
Not really. And even if you could, like you could buy,
they're expensive.
I remember like I saved up for a really long time. And this was like back in the late 80s, maybe, because I really, really wanted like a real steel bone corset. It's like they're so easy to get nowadays.
Yeah, not back in the day.
Back then I had to order one. Bucks. Yeah, they were like, it was almost $400. Yeah. Like I had to order like a woman that made it for me. Yeah. Like, you know, custom. But I mean, I saved up for like a year or two, like to buy that because it was super expensive.
So it wasn't capitalism as you know it. It was like a lot more like fucking Soviet communism, man. Fucking, there was no choice. Everything was just standardized mass production, fucking commodity clothing.
Well, yeah, like I said, that's why it's so much
4 couches.
That's why it's like so much easier nowadays to find like, you know, if I can look and be like, you know, I'd really like a washcloth that has Cthulhu on it.
Yeah,
and it's like you can find that like immediately. It's like you don't even have to, or it's easy to make it yourself. You know, all you have to do is like do a design yourself and upload it to something and they'll print it and send you one. Yeah. You know what I mean? So, but anyway, we went off on a tangent.
Yeah, we got to check off. Yeah, we got to check off.
We might do, I'm not sure, we might do another one tomorrow because tomorrow's Tuesday and that's when the regular episodes go up, but I already put the episode. So we might do a sidetracks tomorrow. We'll see how it goes.
Maybe we'll talk about fucking, you know, news and current events or whatever. or just whatever you guys want to talk about.
Yeah, well, just like I said, we'll probably just do that tomorrow, probably around 2:00 like usual. Because like I said, this is a good
everybody
time
likes
for
me
us
to make predictions though. They want me to go Nostradamus on them, you know. And I might be able to channel some shit, especially if I've been drinking. Maybe we ought to do it when it's later on in the evening.
You want to do an evening one so you can drink?
Probably get more people watching.
We could drink it too in the afternoon, but I'd feel like an alcoholic. I'm just saying, it's like not like there's anybody.
Job to drink. And
not like anybody's around the judge exactly, and I don't really care.
This is our job.
We're going back.
Working.
We're going back to like Mad Men days, where it's just like you
drinking on the job,
just drinking on the job. And doing
yeah, every one of those fucking offices, executive offices, had a bar in it.
I know.
So I'm gonna get up there and drink and talk business.
I did work at one place that had, it was a liquor distribution company. It was Van Gogh Vodka. They did actually have a bar. You weren't allowed to just like belly up to it and drink whenever you wanted to, but sometimes on Fridays, like an hour before, like they would be like, oh, we got a new flavor, or we got a guy to mix a new cocktail, and they'd have everybody like in there and you could have some. But because they don't want anybody like puking and barfing and laying around the fucking office, just like any. But I just thought that was when I first started working there. That was one of the first things I did was take a picture of that. I'm like, hey, I work in a place with like a big ass bar. Isn't that awesome? Yeah, I liked that job actually. It was fun. But yeah, so if you have Shudder and you like horror anthologies, you like 80s movies, you like super gory horror comedies, then this is a really good one, and you really need to check it out. More people need to see it. Because it's really, really kick-ass. Joe Bob Briggs also did a version on his channel if you want to check out that. He's always amusing. But that'll do it for today's matinee. We will probably see you guys again tomorrow.